Okay.
But do put suggestions in the chat box so they can become official records of the meeting.
All right, I think it looks like we have a good group, and I'm trying to see, I saw Andy on here a second ago and Adrina. Do we have everyone on your team, Jill? We want or need?
Is Andy Scott coming?
I was wondering that.
He is. He may be still in another meeting, but he'll be here eventually. We can start without him.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think we have everybody.
So is Edward Flores, the Edward Flores from Bakersfield?
No, this is Edward Flores from UC Merced.
Oh, hi, because I have a cousin named Edward, but then I have a cousin named Everything Flores. So just want to make sure that, we're not related.
No worries about that.
But we still might be related because, I have 71st cousins, so you never know.
Awesome. Okay, Andy, yeah, if we want to get started without Scott, we'll definitely kick it over to you all. And yeah.
Thank you, Jill, and I can start. We can start with introducing Edward Flores. We have been working with Edward. He is a professor at University of Merced, and we have been talking with him about doing the health assessment portion of the project that we're working on. And I can let him talk a little bit about his program, but we would be using, I think professors would do a lot of the work, but also master students and doctoral students that are attending UC Merced. And they would be doing a lot of the work when they're not in classes, either summer or breaks, maybe some this summer, some during breaks, and maybe some during next summer. They have done some similar studies, and I don't know, we are excited to have them on our team. Maybe Edward can talk a little bit about what he does with the university.
Absolutely. Thank you for that introduction, Andrew, and thank you. We feel lucky to be a part of these conversations and look forward to finding ways how we can do work that advances the interests of this initiative. So I'm Ed Flores. I'm an associate professor of sociology at UC Merced. I'm also a co-director of the UC Merced Community and Labor Center. And our work at the center focuses on issues related to community, labor, and environment. Just to give an example, we're involved with the California COVID Worker Outreach Project. We're doing convenings around high road training partnerships in the Kern County and San Joaquin Valley region. There's a number of projects that we're working on, including the UC Merced Farm Worker Health Study. And when we were approached about the possibility of doing a health assessment for the city of Fresno, because we have a number of faculty that are affiliated with our center from different disciplines in the university, we saw this as a great opportunity because we do have an interest in issues related to environmental health, issues of equity related to economic development. And unable to join me today is my colleague Sandy Ha, who is in public health at UC Merced. Sandy has several publications and is widely cited in the field of public health. And her work centers on identifying and understanding environmental risk factors, specifically related to pregnancy outcomes, but more broadly in regards to health. Part of her education was at UCLA and being involved with studies that looked at the relationship between traffic, air pollution and adverse pregnancy outcomes, which is something that was very much a part of discussion in Los Angeles around development, right? The amount of traffic on freeways, these heavily congested corridors, and the how there's a higher risk of preterm pregnancies, you know, in homes that are within 500 feet of these major traffic corridors. So, we've talked with her. She's very much interested in being involved with this project and understanding the sorts of outcomes that the city is interested in assessing as the baseline, and just having conversations to see how we could best conduct research that advances the aims of the initiative that's being proposed.
Thank you very much. I would say we are very excited to have UC Merced on our team. As we've said before, our expertise is mostly in traffic. And so that part of it we're very comfortable with, but to be able to bring on some real expertise from the university and from groups that have been involved in these type of studies before, I think is a real big plus. And other than that, we're anxious to get started on the truck route study.
Thanks.
Anybody?
Yeah, I was going to say, are there any sort of, I really, really appreciate Edward being here. I really appreciate the background, especially not only that he and his colleague have in terms of understanding some of the sociology and social issues, but of course the health impacts and how that really will all tie together in a lot of what everyone's been asking. And I want to credit, I believe it's Dr. Curry who helped the city connect with Dr. Flores and his colleague. And so I definitely want to credit Dr. Curry with that connection as well. So yeah, so if there are any questions for the city or for our research group now, we'd love to hear them. Ivanka.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us, Ed. Nice to see you again. And I guess, my question, Ed, is, will UC Merced be using some of the research that might already have been done through Fresno State's Health Policy Institute that was very specific to Fresno? Like, would that be something that cross institutions, I guess you would say, could be possible to do, or to reach out to them, just so that, like, a partnership or ability to just so some of the work may not have to be duplicated if it's current enough and if it's really specific to what you would want to see in the analysis.
Thank you for that question. And, we're very much in support of always using the most relevant data. In this case, if there's existing data that could be useful for the health and impact assessment that has been previously conducted, we're happy to integrate that. We really want this analysis to be the best analysis possible. I have to admit, my field is not, it's not air pollution, and it's and health indicators related to to environmental hazards. This is Sandy's area, so just because she happened to be out of town today, she wasn't able to join us. But I think at the next meeting she'll be able to join, and I think she'll give some some insight into specifically the indicators that might be most useful. But this is very much Sandy's area, so I mean, I could just comment generally and say we're happy to work with folks that have produced relevant research, and to integrate it, yeah, we can do that.
I actually have a couple of questions real quick. First off, not to disparage you, Professor Flores, but is this the final decision that we're going to use UC Merced, or are we going to go out for RFPs for this portion? Because, we have Fresno State here, which is local. And, I know a lot of city council is going to be asking, why aren't we using local Fresno State? They're in our backyard. They're right here. Why are we going down the 99? That's going to be one of the questions, city council will always ask, why are we outsourcing outside of Fresno and outside of the county? That's my first question. And two, are we ever going to talk about the breakdown of the budget for the truck reroute, and what portion is actually going to go to the truck reroute? How much of the money is going to the health study, and how much money are we going to hold back for contingency, for basically the implementation portion of the truck reroute study if we have to do anything for implementation? We've never really, sat down, and I don't think we really talked about numbers. I know I proposed something way back when, but I don't think, did we ever approve it?
I can answer, I guess, maybe both of those questions. We did reach out to Fresno State University. They were not interested in doing the study. And after meeting with with Dr. Flores and the staff from UC Merced, we feel that they're very well qualified. It's not our intention to do a request for proposals for that work. Really think, my personal opinion is, we will get a better study done by the University of Merced than we would by a consultant. That's just my opinion. You may have a different opinion. I think we'll get just a higher quality of a report, and really a better work product, probably cheaper too. The other question about the funding, we have not made any determination on the split on the funding. I know you recommended possibly holding back some of the total funding. I think everyone knows is $750,000. And I believe you recommended holding some of that back to do some improvements for the truck routing after the work is done. There's been no decision made that I'm aware of on how those funds would be divided. I think we would welcome input from the subcommittee with recommendations on how we might divide the money.
Well, I think that you should anticipate us telling you how we're going to divide up our $500,000 in the whole, how can I say this? Our portion of the 750,000 is 500,000. And I think the committee is going to come up with how the money should be divided up between the truck route, the study, the health study, and then also the contingency line item as well for implementation after the report is done. And I think that's something that we should now work on. And also to Dr. Flores, I just want to make sure that your students aren't underfunded and underpaid, because myself, I have, my chosen nephews, over at Harvard doing his PhD. And, I like to make sure that, any sort of graduate students or students that I work with or deal with are, their work is respected and funded appropriately. Because I come from the family of labor, and I always want to make sure that the people that, especially students that we contract with, are taken care of very well.
Absolutely. I just want to comment on that very quickly. As a labor center, we take a lot of pride in promoting the importance of good jobs, both externally, but also as well internally. And various job titles, staff titles within our center are even represented through collective bargaining. And so there's a real democratic worker presence in our center, as in addition to paying, paying well.
Paying well, or is it a competitive wage?
We, like right now, we rely on full-time staff, like specialists, for example.
Mhm.
And so everybody right now gets paid above a living wage, so we're not paying anybody less than a living
Substandard,
wage.
you're doing prevailing basically for your area.
I would say above, because the staff that we have are very, very highly qualified, and we pay them above the above the scale rate that's standard in the UC system.
That's good to hear, because, my big concern is, I don't want to be involved in any organization or any sort of, my ethical standards as far as paying people are pretty high. So that is really good to hear. Jessica, when are we going to start talking about the budget and the budget breakdown and how it's going to go? Because that really needs to be decided from our group, because it is something that we've always talked about, and I think a decision does need to be made pretty soon.
And I think I just want to clarify with you, Lisa, if you can remind me again, when you're talking about budget breakdown of the 500, so knowing, I think you're talking about the 500 from the CERT commitment.
Yes.
Right.
That's
When you're
all we
talking about
have.
breakdown, you're talking about within the RFP itself, separate, like how do we separate out the health study from the truck study in terms of funding? Is that what you mean by breakdown?
So maybe I could jump in a little bit, and Lisa, by all means, if I'm off base, please correct me. But for example, if we're talking about, so the city of Fresno shared that as part of the truck study, they wouldn't be able to fund the research portion. So, for example, the district would have to fund that portion. So, right now, I know the city of Fresno is working with Dr. Flores on the scope and the cost, at which point, that's information that would be needed to put together what the cost for the study will be. And I know the city of Fresno has shared some information about what a typical truck reroute study, and that was used in coming up with the original number. And I think there'll be a refinement process to that, but right now there's still some process of understanding what some of these costs may be, and and that's going to be what's used, at least for a starting point of putting together that information.
Yeah, I'd like to just go back to, this is Dr. Curry. I want to thank Dr. Flores for being present, and especially in the absence of Dr. Ha. Part of the reason why I thought of UC Merced is because they are a research institution. And I know that they have an interest in working specifically within the Central Valley, and specifically on issues that are related to exactly what the truck rerouting is designed to do, at least the public health portion. That was really always to address the health impacts of having these excessive truck traffic going through our neighborhoods. What does that do to the neighborhood, to the health of the neighbors? And for me personally, I always talked about preconception and infant mortality as a way of really measuring the health and well-being of a neighborhood. That's kind of one of the metrics. And so the fact that Dr. Ha has experience in not only looking at preconception health, but the environmental impacts that we've talked about all through AB 617. So there's already an interest in her. She's already expressed an interest. She's already done the research. This is a familiar area to her in terms of location. And it did seem like she is a really ideal fit in terms of having the experience, the scope of work, and the connections and expertise to really put together the kind of information that we really want to see. And that's the connection between environmental impacts and our public health. And so I feel like her research in asthma and cancer and health disparities is exactly the areas that we are most concerned about. And I'm confident from UC Merced's record and the way that they engage with students, the way that they engage with staff, that they will be an excellent partner. So I don't have any reservations about having brought their name up and brought them to the table. And I believe that we will get an extremely quality report that really ties together the work of AB 617 and the very important public health concerns that we all have. So I really appreciate Dr. Flores, and I appreciate the fact that the city reached out to UC Merced, and that this is, ideally and hopefully progressing in a way that really does provide us with information and research that helps us improve our health outcomes.
Thank you, Dr. Curry. I really appreciate that. May I ask, who is Blue Ocean Development America?
Mr. Hall.
Ah, got it.
Yeah, let me unmute myself.
Oh, no, it's okay. You threw me off there. I think you were the next step.
Yeah,
We'll
I got
go-
my, yeah.
We'll go
Yeah,
with
I'm
you
try-
and then Ivanka.
Yeah, I'm working on my branding right now.
Oh, yes.
So
Take
it's
it away.
important.
Celeste.
It's important to promote Blue Ocean Development America.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we'll work on Blue Ocean Development China later. But again, I want to say hello to everyone. Want to thank everyone for their time and their treasures. I want to send out a special shout out to Mr. Benelli. Thank him for all the hard work he's been doing across so many different projects behind the scenes. It's amazing. Can't even imagine how he does it. I haven't been participating in a few committee meetings because I can't. and he's been keeping up with all those meetings and some more. So I want to say thank you, Andrew, for all you do.
Thank you.
Also, Dr. Flores, you know, I want to thank you on behalf of the committee for being here today. Address any questions that we may have. In particular, I think Dr. Curry touched on a very important point that I would like to get some clarification on. I haven't been in some meetings, but I've been very involved in the Transforming Climate Communities process throughout Fresno in particular, but it's been driven by the, you know, California Air Resource Board, Cal Enviro Screen 3.0 study, you know, and right now they have the 4.0 draft that they're preparing. And it seems to have some of the same indicators that was in the 3.0 report that's going to be in the 4.0 report. And I don't know if you guys have decided or not which indicators you're going to be focused on throughout the truck reroute study, if you will. But it seems to be that you're going to be driven towards the pollution burden indicators, if you will, and also the environmental effects of those burdens, those indicators, if you will. Also, the whole notion of the population characteristic indicators, which are what's really at the end of the day killing they're dying from cardiovascular disease and asthma and low birth infant mortality rates and what have you, Dr. Flores. So where do you see the major focus, in order to bring home the data and information from your primary research that you guys will be doing now in order to give the report the teeth that we need in order to really highlight the reality of all these indicators? Do you have a plan already in terms of the scope of indicators that you're going to try to capture, if you will?
We were going to look towards the city and the community to share the types of indicators that folks are interested in being part of the analysis, and as well as I mentioned, Sandy Haas is the expert in this area and would have a sense of what other indicators that might also be useful to examine. And there at this stage, there's no telling what we're going to find in the analysis. But being engaged with the public in the development of any research products is something that our center has experience in. In the past, it's been around, for example, the increase in deaths, pandemic-related deaths in high-risk occupations, in occupations in high-risk industries in California, right? Like the fact sheets and the policy briefs and the reports that we've worked on in the past has very much been driven by the need for greater data and greater informed understandings to drive policy conversations. And so this is what's so exciting about this process, is that it is going to be engaged with community. So Sandy will be working on developing the framework, right, for the scientific analysis. And more broadly, our center is going to be engaged, right, in these conversations around the research and policy that's going to be necessary to help inform and advance the public discussions happening around development.
And I think to add on to that, we'll be looking closely at reports that have been done in Southern California, similar type of studies, maybe in some other parts of California. While I'm not aware that a lot of work has been done in Fresno, there's been a lot of work done in Southern California on health assessment. So be looking at those studies, what the results were, and trying to compare that to the conditions in Fresno.
Thank you, and thanks for answering that, Dr. Flores. I think Ivanka was next, and then Lisa, and then I'm not sure if Sylvester wanted to go again. So we'll go in that order.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Andrew, for the update. I didn't know since our last meeting that Fresno State was not interested. So thanks for that update. I agree with and support pretty much everything that Dr. Curry stated about why she brought forward Dr. Flores and the UC Merced's team of expertise. So my question or comment is still back to the budget and how we're funding and allocating the funds for UC Merced share. So maybe this is a question first for Jessica or Ryan. Out of the 750, we know 250 is part of, I want to say Measure C, is part already the cities. But of the 500, has the Air District just literally handed that 500 over to the city, or is that still in the coffers of the Air District?
Thanks, Ivanka. Yeah, so before we can do that, there has to be an agreement, and so we're still waiting for some of the additional information that would be included as part of that. And so part of that's the scope of work as part of the study, and then what that study may cost. That's all information that would be very helpful, or potential costs as far as estimates. But the money has not been provided to the city. It's still with the district, and the funding, typical agreements, it'd be based on invoice costs. So it wouldn't be that the district would give the city $500,000 and they would do the work. It would be invoiced as far as costs.
Okay, and so that makes sense to me. But are we looking at this as though UC Merced is then basically a consultant of the city? Yes, their health institute, their health research is their space as an educational institute, but the Air District, will they be having a direct agreement with UC Merced, or is that agreement going to be between UC Merced and the city?
It'd be between UC Merced and the city.
So that's a little bit concerning. And this isn't to put any lack of faith on Dr. Flores, is because I know a little bit more about other work that we are involved with UC Merced, and more for facilities, industrial facilities. So it's not my lack of faith in UC Merced, but I don't want to be in a position as a CSC that that we just don't know how much. I don't want their work to be hindered by the city. I want them to fully be able to tell the truth of the situation of health impacts and what they're seeing. And also included in this analysis at the end of the research, truly be able to include their recommendations of where and why and what they see comes of a truck reroute study. So if they've done all the analysis to prove what the community already knows is killing them, if they've done that analysis, I want UC Merced to be able to have the power to state a recommendation that is actually followed or heavily taken under consideration to follow as best as possible and feasible into the city's planning of that truck reroute study. Like, I don't want this just to be a check mark box of a health study that was done to say a health study was done, and then the recommendations that are given are ignored.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, but I think the way, and maybe Jill and Scott, when it came to the consultant, and I imagine it would be the same since the health researchers would also act as a separate sort of consultant, we would work with this subcommittee on those, like throughout the study, there would be regular interactions, say, between Dr. Flores's team and this subcommittee, as well as the consultant and the subcommittee on kind of ongoing updates on the results. And perhaps I imagine even with the draft final report and all the typical things that we would normally do when there's a steering committee following a study. Is that correct, Andy?
I would anticipate, initially that subcommittee would be reviewing the scope of services and the agreement, and then ultimately as they get further into the study, an outline of what the report may have, maybe some interest from the subcommittee that is not in the outline, so modifications to the outline. I think we're very open to having the subcommittee involved every step of the way until the report is completed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivanka. Great question. Lisa.
Well, I got a couple of questions, but I want to piggyback on Ivanka first. I actually want to see original documents. Everything that you get from Merced, I want to read, because I want to make sure that nothing is held back from us and nothing is edited out. And if there's something, I just to make sure, I'm not saying anybody's going to try to hide some outcome, but transparency is transparency. And if you give us the initial reports that you get back from UC Merced, that will create a sense of not only transparency, but, honest discussion about where we're going. That's the first thing. I kind of sat here and broke out the numbers and such. I understand the MOU hasn't been executed and the money hasn't been encumbered to start spending it down. Dr. Flores, Professor Flores, how much do you think are you guys going to need? Because I have a ballpark figure in my mind, and I'm just like, off the top of your head, just guesstimate it for me real quick.
I have to say that this is Sandy Haw's area. And when I spoke with her, she mentioned, apart from the CalEnviro screen data that was mentioned in this discussion, she also mentioned like California Department of Public Health records that are used, for research, right? So being that this is, not my area of expertise, I would hold off giving any number because she's going to be the one that has the best idea.
Dude, aim high.
Point taken, Lisa. Don't make sure that the ask is worthy of the task that we are asking them to fulfill. I definitely get it.
Yeah, and if I can respond to a previous comment, in terms of like sharing out research that UC Merced is producing, the University of California, in its mission is to provide open research. It would violate the mission of the university, and it's a policy exception that will never be granted by the president's office to conduct research that is withheld from the public. So just the fact that, we're conducting research means that it will be made publicly available. And sometimes what's standard, like with our work with other state agencies is, there's like a standard sort of like 30-day review, period before something is released. And so I just want to assure folks on the steering committee that, the work that we do is as always, is going to be open and public.
Okay, that's great to hear. Fabulous. I would have loved to heard a number, because, I definitely have a percentage here, and I think you would be real happy with it, by the way. So tell Sandy, aim high. Here's the question I have for the city. Next week, the budget meetings are starting to happen. And can the city representative please tell us what day is Public Works scheduled for their budget hearings? And is this money being rolled over? And how do we make sure that happens?
My understanding is that the budget is rolled over. I don't know right offhand what day are our budget hearings. Maybe Greg knows.
I believe you guys are Monday. I just
Good, we're
printed up
first
the
up.
budget. Yeah, I think I just printed up the budget, so give me 1 sec.
I think we're Tuesday or Wednesday, actually, is what I have on my calendar.
I'm not
And when
sure
is
what-
Parks? If you come across Parks, let me know.
Okay, here's the list. For Tuesday is Public Works is Tuesday, and Parks is Monday.
Thank you, Greg. I owe you one on that one.
No problem.
Okay, so, and do we have to be in attendance on Tuesday to make sure that the money is rolled over and to let, city council know how important this is and to support the department fully and such?
Lisa, no, and we're actually holding our budget meetings virtual in a hybrid setting. The staff will be in the building along with the council, and the members of the public can participate via Zoom, but you don't necessarily have to check in. We got it.
And
Well,
keep
you
in
know,
mind that the final vote on the budget won't be on Tuesday. That's a budget presentation. So if there's anything in the budget that you don't agree with, or that you do agree with, you can provide comments on it before the final vote on the budget.
Okay, because, I did go through all those hours of the budget last year. So, I'm an old hat at it, but I just need to know when, and just to make sure that is actually in the budget. Because if you remember, last year we were told it was, and then we found out it wasn't, and it just started some,
I remember.
issues. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. So that's why I'm doing my due diligence by asking you what date and do we need to show up. But, I will be there as much as possible to comment on Tuesday. And when is the final RFP?
And Lisa, Lisa, if you just give me a quick sec, we want to apologize for the confusion for last year. Last year was not a normal budget process. This will be. And we will take the budget in two pieces. We'll do the regular budget things that we do, like we do every year. And then the extra ARPA money, we will do separately at a later date. So.
Then the second question I had was about the final RFP. When is that due out? And what is the current timeline on this project? Is there an up-to-date timeline?
We do have a timeline. Jill, do you want to share that?
Yeah, well, I can, if we were to release the RFP in the next few weeks, let me bring it up on my screen so I can see what we're doing.
I'm going to write it down in my notes as projected.
Yes.
Fine.
So, if we did it in the next couple weeks, we would expect to have the RFPs back to us in the committee for review the first week of August. Interviews the end of August with the consultants. finalizing the selection probably around the second week of September. And then, potentially having it to council for approval sometime in November, December.
In November, December,
Council. date.
council approval. Okay.
Thank you, Jill.
And when do you expect work to start?
Well, the council date would be to award the contract. So probably right after the first, if it's November, December, probably after the first of the year.
So January 2022.
Correct.
And when would you expect the work to end and the report to be out?
Well, I think we've kind of always been saying a year, and I think the last discussion that we had kind of talked about 18 months to 24 months. So I mean, I'm thinking maybe a year to 18 months might be a good timeline to shoot for.
So June 2023?
At the outset, yes.
Okay, because this is all projected, right?
This is assuming, we got it, we've released it in a couple weeks.
Okay, all right. That's good to know and hear, updates of, the potential timeline. So we know, really how long this is gonna work. So Professor Flores, can you do this in a year and a half?
I'm sure we can.
Okay, just want to make sure that you have the time you need.
Thank you. So lots of great questions and good clarifications. I think Dr. Curry had her hand up next.
Actually, I think you've responded to most of the questions. I do want to just ask for, in terms of being able to actually find this particular budget item and see that it is listed as we anticipate and as we expect, will we be able to look at a document, find the line by line and see that it is there?
I think the answer to that is yes, but I did prepare that portion of the budget and I haven't looked at it close. I don't know, have you seen that in the budget, Jill?
I think given our,
I haven't really looked.
yeah, I think given given our experiences in expecting things to be rolled over and finding that they aren't, that I think an additional round of due diligence really would be appreciated. And so I would love to be able to see it as an item and know that it is actually there.
Possibly email it out to the group
That'd be wonderful.
sometime, most likely before the end of the week, since the budget hearings are on Tuesday.
Thank you.
And Dr. Curry, I will, I'm pulling up the budget right now, so I will figure out what budget page it's on too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Curry, and all those who helped clarify. I see Mr. Sylvester Hall, your hand is still up. I don't know if that's still up or you had another question.
Just wanted to give a little input to Dr. Flores, if you will. We talked about, some out there that you guys will be considering using in terms of what's available out there already in order to augment, your study. Of course, we mentioned the Cal Environment Screen report. Also, there was a advanced health equity inclusion growth study done by the California Institute, Policy Link Institute as well. Has a lot of great information regarding social, economic indicator studies that were evaluated throughout Fresno County.
Sorry, could you please repeat that one more time? We're having
Yeah, I
some
think
issues with translation.
you're kind of cutting in and out a little bit. I don't know.
Well, there was additional study on top of the Cal Environment Screen
Got it.
3.0 study. And there was a study, done by the Public Policy Institute of California. And they got a lot of great information in there, in their study, and they focused on the entire county of Fresno. So just get some some baseline information and some stuff you'll be able to cross-correlate and what have you. That'll be a great study to take a look at, Dr. Flores. I think more important to myself, and then giving your particular consultant group the opportunity to help the community really drive home any pertinent conclusions that you may have that will help us reinforce some of our existing goals and objectives in terms of our community initiatives that we have regarding health and wellness. In particular, Dr. Flores, a couple of years ago, we adopted a document called the Southwest Specific Plan. Southwest Fresno Specific Plan. Now, how that plan directly correlates to this particular study is that in that particular plan, we had and established several implementation goals and criteria of that plan. And under the mobility initiative, if you will, they had a particular goals and objectives related to truck rerouting. So I would like for you to take a look at that Southwest Specific Plan and take a look at the implementation action goals and objectives. And you'll see under table 8.5 that there is a objective to establish new truck routes in Southwest and South Central Fresno. It actually says adopt an ordinance establishing the truck routes shown on the existing plan and recommended truck routes map. In other words, we did an environmental study, there was a sequence study done, and there was some preferred prospective truck route alternatives suggested. So you guys may want to take a look at that information. It also goes on to say that programming will be needed for truck route improvements into the capital improvement plan of Fresno. So in other words, as they said earlier, we don't want a report to come back and then it doesn't have any teeth and it doesn't get implemented into the budget. We already have a codified document on record that you guys can leverage, which really you can use to say directly to the city, you already have a specific plan saying that you want this done. And this is our recommendation on how you can do it. It says to develop safe routes to schools, plans for school serving plan area. And then it also goes on to say, you know, make recommendations for the budget of those recommended new school plan truck route. So again, that is a tremendous document that you guys will be able to use, and it'll help reinforce some of our efforts here locally to keep building on this particular effort to clean up and improve the quality of life in that particular plan area. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment.
Thanks, Sylvester. Lisa and then Ivanka, I believe. And just as a time check, we have 4 more minutes. I think this has been a really great discussion and I really appreciate this. So go ahead, Lisa.
I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, maybe it's still up. Okay, then I'll go to Ivanka.
Add on to what Sylvester just stated, Dr. Flores is also just the understanding that 617 also covers the South Central Specific Plan, which has not been completed and is currently pending. And as we work on this truck reroute study, not to say the city is ignoring the importance of this, but connecting the dots to the timeline of this truck reroute study with the South Central Specific Plan, along with Southwest Fresno Specific Plan, but specifically for the South Central, which is the area where there's multiple projects that are trying to come through without that plan being finished. And while we are working on a truck reroute study for all of both of these areas that are in 617, there's not enough communication between the planning department and this space of our steering committee and the work that we are doing on a truck reroute study. So it is one of these cart before the horse type of situations. Something as important as a truck reroute study that we are in progress on working on is competing against more development going into South Central area that's impacting the same area of residents and communities that we need proven by the health analysis. And I just want to make this clear to really committee members and the city that there's a need to be more in alignment between the South Central specific plan and then the work. It's really that one hand is doing something the other hand isn't paying attention to, and we're all of the same agency working in the same direction. And so the timeline for the truck study, while it's concerning that it's, you know, its end date, what about the South Central specific plan? If you're moving forward with a plan that is not considering these impacts that are not just there now, but the future impacts of why we need that truck reroute, we're going to basically be allowing for more impacts to occur before we can even set the standard of what should be stopped or what needs to be rerouted. And I just think we all need to be aware of these plans that are covering the same geographical physical area. And they're not working in tandem and they're not following the same timeline, and they should be as one city agency and us as an air district working more closely together to pay attention to what's getting passed and what decisions are being made before the whole picture is looked at.
Thank you, Ivanka. I don't know if Andy had it, or the city. I saw, I don't know if you're unmute, Andy, if you've been unmute or you were responding to Ivanka or Gregory.
No, it's, I mean, I think she brings up a valid point, something that we can work with the planning department. Those studies are not completed. They will be completed, I believe, before the truck reroute study is done, but it can be addressed in broad terms. I think her concern is that some development may occur before the truck reroute study is completed. And I think that's an important, something important we have to look at. The city staff responds to projects that are proposed by developers and landowners. And typically that is based on zoning. And I think her point is that concerns about zoning in areas that may currently be a truck route and that may change and not be a truck route. So it's something that we can pay attention to. I don't know, the timing on the will probably not be completed until after those specific plans are completed. I think we are anxious to get going on the truck route study and the health component, something that we wanted to bring up. I know we're running out of time, but we have received comments on the request for proposals. We would like to get authorization to issue those and get proposals back from consultants. The sooner we get that issued, the sooner we can get started on the work and do the best we can to coordinate the specific studies with the results of the truck reroute study. I know we have comments. I believe we've addressed the comments. Is there any outstanding issues on the request for proposals, or does the subcommittee believe that it's ready to be issued to consultants?
anyone have sort of lingering concerns? I know we went sort of line item by line item last time. I see Lisa unmuted.
Actually, it's Dr. Curry. I just
Oh,
wanted
Dr.
to.
Curry did as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate the point that Ivanka is making. And I think in terms of the purpose of doing the health impact study, it isn't just so that we have another study done. It's really, to me, to inform policy and inform development in a way that respects communities and community health. And so as much as we understand that the timelines may not match up, the real goal to me is for this information to help drive what is in the best interest of communities, despite the fact that developers have a leg up and have an opportunity to advance their own their business aspects and their profit-driven work. As a community and as a community member, the goal for us to have this health impact data is to really push in a direction that respects the health of the community. And having this baseline data is designed, to me, to do that and to really help the city grow and move and develop in a way that respects communities across the city.
Thank you, Dr. Curry. I see Greg's hand is up.
I just wanted to go back and confirm with Ivanka that I too am having a problem with all of the different plans and not syncing up. Funny enough, in the last couple of months, a planning process that began back in 2019, before any of us were together, called the Reverse Triangle Study. It was a study funded by us and COG, is now winding up. Their final meeting is tomorrow. And I kind of think that, this is indicative of the planning process. And so I would agree, yes, they don't sync up. Things can happen with developers. In the meantime, as Andy said, we take what comes before us. But I think in the long run, as Dr. Curry said, it's about having some established policies based on qualified health data that will make us move forward together as a community. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. Did anyone else have comments or any concerns with what Andy just brought up, where we've already sort of seen the RFP several different iterations? We went line item by line item to address at the last subcommittee meeting. And I think the city, to kind of everyone's discussion here and Lisa's point about schedule, is looking forward to releasing that if there's no objections.
Did I miss the last meeting?
Nope, I don't think so. I think, and maybe Jill and Andy, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we went, is that the meeting where we went line item by line item with that nice table that Jill had that addressed each comment?
Yes, and I want to say too that this, even though we're releasing the request for proposals, the next step will be receiving the proposals back from the consultants. At that point, they're going to present a conceptual scope of work in their proposals. And so if there's something that we think we missed or misstated in the request for proposals, we have another chance to visit that. Ultimately, they'll be submitting those proposals. We'll be reviewing them with the committee and possibly adding or changing what they are proposing. And then ultimately, they'll work with us on a scope of services that will go into an agreement that the city council will approve. So this isn't the last bite of the apple. We're going to be working on this and all the way through. So if there's any concerns that something was missed in the request for proposals, it's not a done deal. We're going to all together go through the proposals that we receive, and different consultants will recommend a different scope of work. We may see that, we really like the proposal from Group A, but Group C had a good point. They brought up something in their proposal that we think would be great to add in. Well, we can select, one consultant and say, we would like this included in your scope of services. So, we're going to be going through this a few more times before it's a done deal. So we don't have to feel like the request for proposals is the final document. It's what gets the ball rolling. So it is something that we'd like to issue it, start getting some proposals back from consultants and go on to the next step of getting this work completed.
The only reason why I asked if I missed that meeting, so I could look at my notes to make sure everything was addressed. Was that in April or was that in May?
It was actually April.
April, okay, because I don't have any notes and I'm thinking that's may have been the one meeting. My nap went a little longer than I normally nap. And that may be the only meeting I have ever missed of the 617 anything.
I think, and you guys also, I think most of the notes we went over were your notes, Lisa, and you were at that. This is the subcommittee meeting.
It was April 19th and we went through them and
I don't have
it looks like you had most of the comments again on the document.
Oh, the comment one. Yeah. Okay. I remember that one. All right. I didn't know that was the final drafted RFP though. So, okay. All right. That clarifies it for me. Dr. Flores, Professor Flores, remember, big money ask.
Thank you for that.
We're also anxious to work on an agreement with UC Merced and get started on that portion of the work too.
Absolutely.
So if I can maybe recap sort of what I'm hearing, I'm hearing that it doesn't sound like there are major objections to then the piece of the RFP that at least allows us to get proposals to review from the consultants. So if there's no objections, maybe the city, we can start getting that, which I think this group is really eager to see what that scope of work is really going to look like. We definitely want to get a scope of work and a budget as much, what they think their time is truly worth, and ask going big, as Lisa says, from UC Merced and their research team to move forward so we can start that agreement side on, with the city of Fresno.
Jessica, do we need a motion from the committee to make this happen?
I mean, we don't need one. It's one of those, I think it's up to the group, but I think generally we are a consensus first committee. And I think based on this, that doesn't sound like there's any objections. And I think we could take this as the consensus. But Ryan unmuted, so maybe I'm wrong.
I see some support for it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think in your charter, it says your consensus first, and if consensus can't be reached, we usually go to a voting mechanism. I don't necessarily see, anything actually other than an agreement, or at least not big dissenting voices. So I'm looking at our professional facilitator, she's nodding too. So that generally, I think, is the consensus feel. And then
the one thing I would say, as far as procedure, usually when decisions are getting made, you take the recommendations from the steering committee back and share it with the steering committee so that they can have some input and hear from the members that have spent so much time as part of the subcommittee. Like procedurally, that would probably be the best thing.
Okay, and it looks like Ivanka agrees.
Yeah.
How about if I clarify what the consensus is, because Jessica, you're not really stating it clearly. So everybody's on the same page with the exact same language. And here's what I propose as a consensus language: to move forward with the MOU with UC Merced and the RFP, and to come back to the subcommittee with the budget, with a proposed budget.
Right, and I think the only thing we're actually looking for consensus on is just the RFP piece. But yes, I agree with everything that you just said in terms of the next steps that we were also looking for. But to Ryan's point, when what Ivanka just said in the chat, she agrees with Ryan, maybe process-wise, before we give that final go-ahead, bring it back to the committee. Is that what I'm hearing as well?
Sure.
If I may chime in, yes, procedurally, back to Ryan's point, bringing it to the whole committee so that the whole committee has consensus on the releasing RFP sounds like a good move. And Alyssa, to the consensus definition, it's not everybody, it's the majority. And then when majority is not clear, so we're hearing a lot of yeses, a lot of no's, we are not clear if we have more yeses or more no, we consider that as not having a consensus. And then this way we're moving to the vote.
So maybe what we can do, just for the sake of time, and since we know we want to bring it back to the committee, is if we, we typically obviously have our city representatives on the committee get their update. So maybe during that update, they can either someone from the city, or if someone else on the CSC would like to volunteer to be sort of the person who gives the subcommittee update, and pose exactly what you just said, Lisa, just the RFP part, since that's the main piece we need to move forward on, and talk about kind of briefly what we talked about at this meeting, and allow the whole committee to weigh in. I think that might be the procedure that we would go with.
And like we heard from 9 last week, or was it, no, sorry, Monday. Yeah, we'll definitely, bring this to the agenda setting.
Correct.
As an item for discussion.
So if that works for you all, and maybe either if today, if you haven't decided, if you do attend our agenda setting meeting, you can decide, but if you would all like, if anyone would like to volunteer to be that person to provide that update, if I don't hear anything today, I'll maybe ask again for those of you who are on this committee that attend the agenda setting meeting next week. We're about to schedule that, so you'll see that pretty shortly here if you haven't already. And then that will be the process that we'll go through if that works for everyone here. And that's for the RFP, and that's the decision point for the RFP. In terms of what we all wanted, what we kind of discussed today, we also gave a lot of suggestions for plans and studies for the city and for Professor Flores and his team to continue to look at in terms of what they're bringing forward. And then, yes, of course, Professor Flores and his colleague to get a budget and a scope of work together so we can move that piece along as well, are kind of the next other steps. So without seeing any volunteers, unless I missed any in the chat, we'll definitely at the agenda setting meeting bring it up again. And if otherwise, of course, we can just have Scott or whoever else from the city provide their update and pose it to the committee and facilitate that discussion and generate consensus and hopefully move forward.
So Jessica, we have a consensus on two things. One is to move forward with the UC Merced MOU and the RFP. That's the first thing. The second is to come back to the subcommittee with the proposed budget to this subcommittee, and with the final approval to occur at the entire committee, in the entire 617 committee, correct?
I think, and maybe I'm wrong here, I think the only thing right at this moment we're going back to the whole committee for is just to allow us to release the RFP from the city. I think to your point, all of what you just said is also accurate, that we need to still work out with this subcommittee.
How about the second part is to come back to the subcommittee with a proposed budget, because we need to start working on the proposed budget. I think
that proposed budget, as I mentioned earlier, it really is derived from Dr. Flores's kind of working with his colleague on understanding kind of their scope of work and what's going to cost. So I think we need that first in order to get that proposed budget. So I think all of those things definitely are 100% topics we need to talk about at the next meeting.
So this is what because I want to make sure the consensus is written down so there's not so much confusion, because I'm listening to you and I'm getting confused. So we're going to move forward with the UC Merced MOU and the RFP. That's the first step.
I think you're combining those in my, I don't know, maybe I'm getting, the RFP is for the consultant for doing this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's two separate action items, but it's in one sentence. That's why there's an and. To move forward the UC Merced MOU and to move forward on the RFP. Then the second step is to come back to the subcommittee with a proposed budget for the subcommittee to look at. So we need to start talking about the money.
I agree.
That way everybody's on the same page. Somebody has it written down so there's no confusion.
That sounds great. I think Then at the agenda setting meeting, we will hammer out exactly what that looks like on the agenda so that everyone on the regular steering committee is very clear on what that decision point will be. And that way there's no confusion when it comes up for discussion at the steering committee as to what they're all deciding and what information they're getting from the subcommittee.
Exactly.
Great, cool, awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your time. I'm sorry that we went over, but I think we accomplished a lot today. So I just want to thank especially Dr. Flores for attending and giving a lot of really, really good updates. I think that really helped move that big, important piece along.
And thank you for the invitation to have joined this meeting.
All right, well, the rest of you have a great night. We appreciate your time. Thanks for a little extra time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And don't forget Dr. Flores.
Thanks, big. I love it.
Bye.